Thank you for
I'm
doing
not.
that.
Let me see if the live streaming works.
Okay. Hi, Dr. Jenny. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Yeah,
I might not be able to join you for, for the whole session.
Okay, it's okay. Thanks.
where are you?
I'm
Hi.
hi.
How long are you there for?
We're here for 5 days. This is the third day. It starts
Ooh.
from 8:30 to 8:30 in the morning and 8:30 at night. Like 12
Wow.
hours of work.
Ooh. But you get
Wow.
to go home and sleep, right?
Yes.
Okay. At least.
Yeah. It's crazy. I think we're now live streaming
Yes.
on YouTube.
Okay.
Okay,
So
that's good.
because I received a notice saying that I'm live streaming.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just to let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We still
I
have to.
hope more people are joining us because I've sent out information on our um, bilingual center.
Okay, I hope so too.
Yeah, yeah.
YouTube.
We have 2 more minutes till 9 o'clock.
Yes.
Can you send me the link for YouTube?
Oh, okay. Hold on. Um, if you go to YouTube and um, search for Chen Jane or Jane
Okay.
Chen, I think, then you could perhaps you can find my channel.
Okay. Yeah, I can. And okay, I can see you. Okay.
Is it live streaming now?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm on my phone, so I'm not sure if I look for the YouTube app on my phone, and if I would be logged off from
Mm.
Zoom. So okay. The good the good part is that I've seen you know that people are watching our recordings,
Oh,
live recordings on YouTube. You could see that the number of views have gone up. Um, and perhaps I can give you the numbers of views like uh, for our first 2 sessions.
okay.
Yeah. All right. So it's 9 o'clock.
Okay, shall we start?
Okay. Let me mute my mic.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome again to the third week of Scientific Literacy in CLIL. Okay. Before we start today's session, let's just review what our schedule. So during the first week, we gave an introduction to scientific literacy in CLIL. And then last week, we had STEM curriculum design and sharing. For today's session, we're going to focus on 2 science lessons, water cycle and rock cycle. And then next week, we're going to do corpus analysis of language in the science classroom. From all our learnings from the first to fourth week, I hope we are able to create a science lesson plan and share it to others so we can each learn from our experiences. Okay, So without further ado, let's look at these two. We're going to look at water cycle and rock cycle. But the goal of this live session is not so much. Okay, someone joined us? Hi, thank you for joining us. Hello, thank you for joining. Okay, so going back. So today's live session, the goal is not so much to talk about the science behind the water cycle and the rock cycle. What we're going to do is try to see how these topics could be taught to English language learners. Now, as a brief background, we chose these two topics because they are both covered in 6th grade science in Taiwan. Now, when we conducted a workshop for 6th grade science teachers, we spent one workshop for water cycle and another workshop for rock cycle. Okay? So from what we learned from the water cycle, we took that and then we tried to adjust it to when we had our workshop for the rock cycle. Okay? So at any point in the discussion, please feel free to ask questions or give comments. Okay? Are we good so far? Any questions? Okay, let's continue then. Okay, let's look at the water cycle. Okay, when we conducted the workshop, this is how we did it. On the left side here, we have an illustration of the different components that are important for the water cycle, but they are unlabeled. And then on the right side here, we had strips of paper with words which are related to the water cycle. These ones in black are the different parts in this picture. And this one in red would be the processes involved. We're not saying that these are the exact words that we should use. It depends on the student's level and the requirements of the lesson. For instance, if you feel that sun is too easy for the students, then we can take it out. Okay? Now, once we have this figure and these labels, the next task is for the students to start labeling these parts, of course with the aid of the teacher. And we do it step by step so that it becomes more comprehensible. So it would look something like this. So this is teacher Mei Chen. She is one of the 6th grade science teacher that we are working with. So you see here on the left, we have an illustration we have a big printout of the diagram. And here on the right would be labels. Kindly note that we did it this way because we had a few participants. Now, if you plan to do this for a class of about 40, maybe you can consider flashing this one on the screen and making bigger labels or something similar to what we're going to do right now. Okay? So going back. Once we have that, then we start asking questions. So for instance, we can ask the students, okay class, what is this one here? It makes us warm and it gives us light. And then hopefully students will be able to answer sun. That's correct. And then their goal is to get the label of the sun and put it here. Now sometimes if the word is too difficult or their English level is a bit low, then maybe they might not be able to answer this in English, but in their mother tongue. In that case, then we can help them and translate it to English for them or ask their classmates to do it for them. Okay, and then we continue. For instance, okay, how about this one? What do you call this where the fishes live? And then maybe they can say, oh, it's ocean. And then we put the word ocean there. Okay? And then we may ask, okay, what happens when the sun gives heat to the water in the ocean, what do we form? These ones here. What do you call this? Yes, that is water vapor. And can anyone tell us what is the process that turns water in the ocean to water vapor? Yes, that is evaporation. Okay? Now, after this first step, then we pause and try to summarize what we have learned so far. So for that, we can make a statement here like the heat from the sun turns the water in the ocean to water vapor through evaporation. Notice that when we did this, the words sun, ocean, and water vapor are in black, which is consistent with their color here. Likewise, evaporation is red. By keeping the same colors, then hopefully this would facilitate retention. Okay. Now after that, then we can give an opportunity for students to try to say the sentence out loud and point to the diagram to again help them remember what they have learned. Okay, so for instance here we have this strip of paper, so which is the statement that we have for the first step, and we do it step by step and then ask them to work this way. We can ask perhaps one student to point to the different elements while another student or maybe the entire class would recite it. How so? Let's try to listen to it. I'll play this video.
The heat from the sun turns the water in the ocean to water vapor through evaporation.
Okay, so that is what we did. Okay, and then for the other steps, we do a similar process. Okay, so again, we won't go through the details because we'd like to spend more time discussing on how we can improve this lesson or any insights from you. So we'll just go through it briefly and just pause on or highlight some other steps which have some important points. Okay? All right, so we move on and so on. Okay, and then just proceed. Okay, now, for instance here, this is the sentence. What we have found out when we were working with the teachers was that they were interested to know how to pronounce big words correctly, for instance, condensation. So if we teach this, we learned that it would be good if we ourselves are comfortable speaking these big words. So one of the useful tools that I use for this would be Google. I just type, for instance, condensation and then pronounce. And then that would give us an opportunity to listen to the correct pronunciation and practice it as well. Okay. All right. Now moving on. Okay. So we continue in a similar fashion. Okay. And so on. All right. Now, in this next step, here, the word that we put in was rain. And we have a sentence for it. And then snow here. And we formed another sentence for it. Okay. Now, the next word that comes in would be precipitation here. Okay, and this brings us to a misconception. Okay, Tihana joined us. Hi, Tiana. Thank you for joining us. Okay. All right, and here's the misconception. Rain and snow technically are forms of or examples of precipitation, but some students are actually not just students or not just English language learners, but science learners in general think that this is a process And one possible reason is this. These words in red are processes. And notice that most of them highlighted end in TION. Okay? And precipitation happens to end in TION as well. So they think that, okay, this is likely to be a process. Although in this case, it is not. Precipitation is a term used for anything that falls from the sky, like snow, rain, hail, and those types. All right. Now, moving on. Okay, Patty joined us. Thank you, Patty, for joining. Okay. All right. And then we continue. Again, we won't discuss it in detail, so we'll have more time for sharing. Okay. And so on and so forth. Okay, now let's look at the next one. We'd like to highlight something here. Okay, here the word that we put in is plants. And the sentence that we formed is plants drink groundwater. Technically speaking, plants don't drink because drinking is something that it's like liquid that passes through the mouth, but a plant doesn't have that. But the reason why we decided to use drink is because we want to help students understand the process by relating it to what they know and using simple words. So we opted to use drink here. Okay. All right. And then we continue until we go through the other steps of the water cycle, like so. Okay, so this is the last sentence of the water cycle. So by this time, we have used all the words that we have and have completed the water cycle. Okay, and here what we learned, one of the things we've learned is this one. Okay, now here's a question from Dr. Jane. Sorry, I'll just have to look for it. Oh, I lost the screen. But perhaps, Dr. Jane, would you like to unmute yourself so that we can all hear a question? Thank you.
Okay. Tiana was asking whether we can plants use water.
Plants use water. That's also possible, yes. So
another question would be, do you think that kids need to memorize the terms such as condensation, precipitation, and evaporation?
That's a good point. Actually,
for an EFL, for students from an EFL setting for elementary school.
Okay, that's a good point because it's a point of contention between different teachers who teach this. Those who teach science for or EFLs with a science background, they tend to insist that students should learn the English words. For those who have an English background, they are not too concerned about students memorizing these English words for as long as students understand what the process is. How about you? What do you think?
I believe I agree that those probably who have scientific background insist on this phrase, but I suppose it depends also on the age of the students.
Yes.
So if they're, let's say, around 10 years old, probably they can grasp these rather difficult words to pronounce.
Okay.
But I think it's more important for them to grasp the idea.
Yes.
And I would personally be happy if I write, let's say, connect like a sort of a word cloud or something like that, or a spidergram. So the word precipitation, and then they have to add the words which are connected, something like rain, snow, something like that. So as long as they can use it in some way, passive form, I think it will be okay.
Okay. Thanks, Tiana, for that. Yes. So maybe it's not needed, and it depends on the student's level. Any more insights?
Yiming, would you like to grab the mic?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, very well.
Yeah, my question has a lot to do with the understanding how do teachers, because most of the teachers in Taiwan, actually they have problems with assessment because they don't know whether they should switch to their mother tongue, that is Mandarin, or they should switch to English for assessment to make sure students or to confirm the students have some kind of understanding of the concepts or can even explain or explicate or analyze the concepts. So that is my question with regard to how you assess students understanding or application of the terms or the concepts. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that question. I'd like to answer that based on our experience working with the elementary school, our sister elementary school. In their case, they teach some science lessons. Oh, sorry. They have several sessions of science per week, and one session is bilingual. Nonetheless, for their final exam, final assessment, it's still in Chinese mostly. The very basic ones are in English. For instance, just simple solid, liquid, gas, and that's it. All the rest are in Chinese. Okay. How about the experience of others, for other participants?
Tiana, would you like to share your experience in your
Yeah,
country? Can you tell us where you're
actually,
from and introduce yourself? Yeah.
yes, thank you. First of all, sorry not to be regular at these meetings because it's 2 a.m. in my country. So
Oh, I'm sorry
last
about
two
that. Thank you for
the
joining us.
last two
Yes.
weekends I was really beaten completely and I wouldn't be able to speak. I come from
No problem.
Serbia. I was just writing in some late discussion forums for this session before the meeting started, and there was a question about our formal system education. So basically, children here start learning English from the first grade of primary school, which means the age of 5 or 6. But our school system started to introduce as a law obligation that children at the age of 5 or 6 need 6 months of preparation before starting the primary school. And many kindergartens provide English lessons at that level. I sort of lost touch with that colleagues who work in those groups, so I don't really know how much and how efficiently they do. I would say that CLIL is not widespread in Serbian schools. It's more like a personal initiative of some teachers who who appreciate it and see its positive points. And perhaps personal initiative among English teachers and subject teachers if they want. I would say that private schools, which are growing in numbers in our country, not so many not so many primary school, but I know, for example, Belgrade's capital city, I believe that there are 5 or 10, something between 5 and 10 primary schools opened over the period of last 15 years with variety of levels and the way how they operate. They have to follow the rules in terms that accreditation is given by the Ministry of Education, but the curriculum which they use and how it's carried out, I'm not quite sure. I think there is a quite large variety, including the quality of teaching. But private schools are generally better equipped. They have much more financial resources to provide all kinds of things which make education innovative and more appealing to students. So I believe that there, among these teachers, there are more CLIL than in state schools. In state schools, it's relatively rare. There is no official policy on that. And primary school lasts for 8 years, secondary school between 3 and 4, depends. Vocational schools sometimes last for 3 years. And One important thing about our children learning English is that we are exposed to English quite a lot because our TV and a lot of content which goes through digital devices is not dubbed. So from channels on TV which specialize in children's programs, a lot of things is predominantly made in America, but a lot of things are in English, and children simply pick up that. The cinema offer and TV programs, domestic programs, actually offer dubbed cartoons for children, but large number of things. Plus, we have, let's say, Discovery Channel, National Geographic Channel on cable television, so the people who can afford it, children are exposed to that. And because parents perceive that languages, predominantly English, are very important for the future of their children, there is great interest in parents to enroll their children to different language courses, and there are a lot of private schools, private language courses available here. So as a teacher, I have the feeling that sometimes students can pick up and communicate on some relatively basic level, even if they are teenagers. They completely lack grammar, but they are quite willing to communicate. And sometimes you can find children at the age of 9 or 10 that can easily speak A2 level, B1 level.
So Tiana, so Amy was asking the question whether these science terms are being tested in English for your primary school students.
We don't have many bilingual schools. Most bilingual schools, actually, those schools who have bilingual programs are at secondary level schools. I think they have slight problem with providing teachers for the subject. So not all the programs are in that, and it depends on the school which subject teachers, what subject teachers they can provide. So the people who are able to speak a certain language at high enough level. So among those who tend to use CLIL, I believe that's a combination of L1 and English, but not strictly, as I said, because there is no formal policy about using CLIL. And for secondary schools, I think it depends. So they combine it. I'm not quite sure. Not many schools have science as a program in bilingual. It's more about history, geography, music, something like that. Maybe sometimes math, but I think math is relatively, the teachers of math are sought and there is great demand for them. So I think that even fewer teachers of math, for example, are good at a foreign language at that level to teach it.
All right.
I don't know
whether thank you very much for sharing. So
thank
you very much for sharing.
You're welcome.
To answer Amy's question, how do CLIL teachers assess students' understanding or application of the terms? Well, from my understanding of the students from NTUE elementary school, experimental elementary school, what they did was they made sure students understand the terms because they were engaged in the science experiments in class, and they had group works. And one of the things they did this semester is that the sixth graders, they hosted science stations, 4 different science stations on 4 different science topics. And the sixth graders, they were teaching the younger kids, the 3rd grade, the 4th grade, and 5th graders, to conduct those science experiments in the stations. And so that was part of a formative assessment through teaching the younger kids how to make slushy, what the science concept behind adding salt to ice and making slushy, and explaining to the younger kids in English how to make it, and let the younger kids know that very interesting. And that's one of the ways, meaning that the students that are affiliated elementary school make sure that kids understand. Well, it's not part of the simple paper and test assessment. But I think that's more important that the sixth graders, when they learn these science concepts in English, they're able to share their passion in English to the younger kids. And I think that's one of the ways they make sure that they know the science terms. Yes. And yeah. Okay. So back to you, Michelle.
Okay, thank you, Yiming, Tiana, and Dr. Jane for the insights. I have a question for Tiana. You mentioned that in private schools, they normally use CLIL, but for state schools, there's no policy, so they're not using CLIL. So is there any specific approach that they use instead?
Maybe I wasn't clear about the private schools. I believe that there is more interest in using it because I personally feel it's very engaging method, something that is more memorable, and because private schools have more resources, technological, lot of laboratory things, materials. So that basis allows them to perhaps use it more, but I don't have really the information how much it is used. I would dare say that it's not really a policy. It's more, as I said, initiative to create a way of teaching which is interesting for students, more memorable, more engaging. And I suppose that the CLIL has its place in it because of that. But I'm not sure really how much it is used.
Okay.
Definitely expect from some little knowledge that I have talked to some people who work in private schools, I would say that that it's used more. In state school, as I said, it's not clear. There is no policy.
Okay, noted. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
All right. So that's how we taught the water cycle. So I'll skip this slide and just show you the teachers that we work with. We have here teacher May, and we have here Elaine and Oscar. So they're from our affiliate elementary school, and we work with them for this workshop. And then I'd like to point out that here Oscar used the same way to teach water cycle to his students. But then he said that students found it difficult because one reason is that they needed more terms in Chinese. Okay, so that became a challenge for us because, I'll skip that because we already had the questions, comments, and suggestions. And so when we tried to work on, and so when we went to the next workshop on rock cycle, we thought, okay, the approach that we use for water cycle did not quite work well for our students. So how can we change the lesson for rock cycle or the activity for rock cycle? And I guess this is one of the things about trying to teach science in English. Sometimes you may think, oh, this might be a good approach. But then if you try it, you figure out, oh, maybe we need to change it because in this case, students were not did not appreciate it that well. So we thought of a different approach. So here our question was, how do we make sure that we teach the science enough, but at the same time take care of the language level of the students? So for that, we got our inspiration from this comic strip. So basically, the nice thing about this comic strip about the rock cycle is that we see Balboa, which is the rock here, going through different places and changing forms. However, one improvement we can make here would be the use of language. For instance, the words are quite big, and then that is for the language part. Now, for the science part, rock cycle is a cycle, so it goes around. But in this comic strip, we are unable to see it that clearly. So given those things and Oscar's comments, then we came up with this. We made a story. The goal here is to make the lesson more interesting for students. So instead of just an illustration of the water cycle and they put the labels, we made a story to it. Okay? And then we called it Rocky the Explorer. Rocky because it's a rock cycle. Explorer because the cycle is about the rock traveling or exploring different places. Okay. We won't discuss the I won't tell the story as in one sentence after the other, because in the end I'll show you a video of the elementary school teachers doing that. But what we'd like to highlight would be several things. First, in this story, what we did was to put on the top left side an illustration and then Rocky is there. The purpose of this part is for us to understand where Rocky is at for this part of the story, and later on see that indeed a rock cycle involves a cycle going around. Okay. Another thing we did was to address the students' concern about language use is that we made this story as simple as possible in the sense that we use small words. And for those big words that are unavoidable, for instance, for a rock cycle, we cannot help but use the word magma, which is a big word for the students. So what we did was to highlight it in red and give its Chinese translation, because here in Taiwan we're using Chinese. Now, for the right side of this storybook, what we did was to put a picture to further describe what is happening for this part. Okay, it doesn't make as much sense here, but later on we'll see that how else we can use this part to describe further the point. Okay, so we go on here. Notice that I'll move back. Please watch Rocky on the upper right left hand side. Earlier, Rocky is here. Now, Rocky went up. So the nice thing about putting this illustration on the upper left hand corner is that students can still have an idea of where that step is happening. Okay, and then we move on. Okay, now when we discuss the rock cycle, we cannot help but talk about the three different types of rocks, one of which would be an igneous rock. This is actually a difficult word, not just for English language learners, but even in native English speakers, because igneous rock is not normally used in everyday life. And Dr. Jane will talk more about it next week in corpus analysis of language in science use. But anyway, so this is a big word. So we have to help students with it. Okay, now, since here the topic is igneous rock, on the right-hand side, we have an example of an igneous rock. Okay, and then we see here Rocky with other rocks to point that our rock is made up of many smaller things. Okay, and then we can also use this opportunity to talk more about an igneous rock. The level of discussion would again depend on the student's level and the needs of the class. And then we proceed with the story like so. Again, still highlighting words that are crucial for this process, and so on. Now, for instance, here the main word is erosion, but if we feel that gravity, although it's not a main factor in the rock cycle, but if we feel that this is such a big word for students, then maybe we can aid them by giving the Chinese translation or the mother tongue translation for it. And then we move on. like so. Okay. All right. Now, when we reach here, for instance, here we're talking about deposition. Here, notice that we use different shapes and colors of rocks to emphasize that the rocks or the minerals don't have to look the same. Many times they are not. And that is especially the case for a sedimentary rock. Okay. And then we continue. Again, this could be an opportunity to discuss more about the other type of rock, sedimentary. And then we continue. Here it's about pressure and heat changing their form. So we notice that Rocky and his friends change shape and form. And then finally, we talk about metamorphic rock. And highlight that again, it would be the Rocky would end up in the same place where he started, and then there would be another rock cycle. So that emphasizes that it goes again and again and again. Okay. All right. So like I mentioned, we use this for our workshop with the elementary school teachers. So this is their presentation. Let's watch it.
Hello, I want to say the Rocky the whole story. First, this is Rocky. He lived in magma, which is from inside the volcano. When the volcano Rocky was pushed outside the volcano. As Rocky grew, he joined many others to form an Igneous Rock.
For many years, wind and rain passed through the Igneous Rock. This helped Rocky and a few of his friends break free. This is called weathering. Wind, rain, and gravity helped move Rocky and his friends to another place. This is called erosion. Rocky and his friends landed on top of the river. So Rocky and his friends landed on top of a river. After many years of cold rain and erosion, Rocky said goodbye to his friends and swam along. Rocky got tired of swimming and fell to the bottom of the river. Others stepped on him and Rocky got crushed. This is called deposition. After many years of deposition, Rocky and his friends turned into a sedimentary rock.
Rocky and his friends continue to be stepped on. They got closer to the bottom of the earth where heat and pressure split and changed them. Rocky and his friends turned into a metamorphic rock. Rocky continued to fall toward the bottom of the earth until he stopped to melt and turn into magma. He stopped to prepare for his next rock cycle.
Yay! So there you have it. That is the story of Rocky the Explorer. Okay, unfortunately, when we had this workshop for the elementary school teachers, they were already done with the rock cycle lesson, so they didn't have the opportunity to do the same activity for their students. So my question is, how do you think can we improve this lesson? Or if you have any questions that are applicable not just to the water and the rock cycle, but to science lessons in general. So we have about 19 minutes left, so we'll open the floor to more questions and comments so we can help each other out, or maybe share your experiences. Anyone from the group, please? Yes, please, Tiana, please go ahead.
I mean, I said this presentation is lovely, engaging, really, and it's very nice character, Rocky, the main actor of the main character of the story, who goes through the cycle. But I think that given a lot of tools, which are digital tools that we have now, perhaps something with a little bit of animation might be interesting for students. So even regardless whether we have lessons online or in a classroom, these chunks of material could be more engaging for students, because I believe that, I am not quite sure about your country, but it seems that it's a tendency for all over the world that a lot of children very young have digital devices at their disposal, and they're sort of used to accept, to absorb any content visually. So if it's if something moves there is more chance to grab their attention. Or perhaps because gamification is also a trend nowadays in education, perhaps with cooperation with IT teachers or somebody who is good at coding or something, to make some small. I believe there are some programs that can enable teachers who are not really good, who are not IT sector teachers, to make some animation which is interesting enough for children. So that might be perhaps a way to spice up the lesson.
Okay, thanks, Tiana, for that. And I agree, yes, it would be better if there were animations. Pardon us, I guess we'll have to tie up with IT experts to do that. But yes, I agree. That would be a good way to spice up the lesson, as you mentioned. Okay, how about Yiming? From the perspective of Taiwanese students, what do you think can we do to this lesson to make it?
I think from a Taiwanese students' point of view, if we want to do this kind of lesson, I think it would be possible if we give them a lot of scaffolding. Number one, a buddy scaffolding. That means we may have, good English learners, or maybe higher level English learners paired with lower English learners. And then number two, maybe we need some scaffolding like visuals, graphic organizers, realias, real objects. Not only that, we definitely, as you mentioned earlier, we definitely need to allow the students to sometimes interact or communicate or summarize or interpret or explain in Chinese. Let the students do the talk using L1. And not only that, perhaps we also have to offer them some kinds of sentence starters or sentence frames to let them use some English to explain them again. However, with the teacher's support, like English starters or English frames, or sometimes modeling and gestures, because actually actions speak louder than words, literally. That means we can use our gestures, modeling to help the students to understand what the content is about sometimes, especially for primary schools or elementary schools in Taiwan. And definitely alternative assessment instead of pencil and paper assessment, maybe for primary school students, as Professor Jin just mentioned earlier, perhaps alternative assessment or multiple assessments may work better for the students in Taiwan if we want to practice or implement this kind of CLIL teaching. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Yiming, for that. You mentioned two good points that I'd like to say something further. he mentioned that it would be good if we'd provide students with sentence frames, and that we can provide scaffolding depending on their level, the high leveled English learners and the low. I'd just like to share a video that I watched. It is a science classroom video in a school in the United States whose students are of Spanish or Mexican descent. So their mother tongue is Spanish, but they have to learn in English. And the nice thing about this is that the teacher prepared different worksheets for the same topic. And the sentence frames available were also different depending on the student's level. So basically, it's not like he assigned, okay, you are on you have a high English level, I give you this worksheet. Oh, you have low, you get this one. No, he just presented all of them, and then they said, okay, students, please get a worksheet. I will leave it up to you to get which one you feel comfortable working with. So the end goal is the same, for them to learn the same lesson, but the scaffolding that they received depended on what they needed. Okay. All right, any more comments? Maybe Patty or Dr. Jane or Dr. Jenny? Anyone from the audience? Okay, yes, Tiana, go ahead, please.
I just wrote it in the chat. So basically, one of the ways to kind of motivate students to participate or to put into practice what they have learned is perhaps organize them in teams within the class, and each team would need to create some questions for the quiz to ask the other team. So I would say that they can be allowed to use both languages, their mother tongue and English, so for some difficult words. But in that way, they would, without too much stress, try to use what they learned. It would be more motivating and it would be fun. So whenever they have fun, and in a way, it's not really assessment, but I think that with CLIL, it's very difficult to make a right form for assessment. And perhaps creating projects might be a way to see how much or assess, to use that word, how much students have learned, because through projects in teams, they can actually show practically what they have learned.
Okay. Thanks, Tiana, for those comments. You mentioned something about students can create questions that other students can answer. That is actually a great idea, because students get ownership. Because these are questions that not the teacher made, which is the typical, but it's something that their classmates made. And if another student is answering a student's question, they say, oh, that's my question, I get proud, and I'm proud of it. Okay, just one word of caution there though. When I was working with, because I made a research on students creating multiple choice questions and asking other students to answer such questions. When they evaluated such approach, one of the concerns of students was they couldn't trust if the questions were correct because it was their classmates who did it. So they feel that they would trust the questions more if it came from the teachers themselves, because they are supposed to be those with a better understanding of the lesson. So one of the suggestions they made there is perhaps, yes, it's a good idea to ask students to create questions that other students would answer, but before allowing others to answer the question, maybe the teacher can have a look at these questions just to make sure that they are accurate before presenting it to other students.
While you were saying that, which is completely valuable insight, but I didn't really think of that. I had actually idea when I suggested students making questions, because that gives them a feeling of importance, that they are those in charge, so to say, and that
yes,
can
definitely.
be very boosts their confidence. But in order to prevent that doubt among students whether the questions are valid. Maybe teachers can perhaps prepare in advance, let's say, number of questions with possible answers, multiple choice ones, and tell students, okay, prepare different sets of questions and give different teams of students, okay, now you use this material to create questions.
Yes.
In a way, so in that case, they would have, or maybe help them with structure, something like that.
Yes.
So in that way, students would have sort of autonomy
Yes.
or making questions, but again, it would be under the guidance of a teacher.
Yes, sounds good. And that ties up with what Iming said earlier, that we can provide scaffolding for students. So maybe you can tie that up with students creating their own questions. Thanks for
Exactly.
that. How about Dr. Jane or Dr. Jenny or Patty? Would you like to share your thoughts?
Hold on. I'd like to share some photos, and I'm trying to see if I can share it with using my phone. Okay. Let me see. Sorry. Can you share? Can you see these photos?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you see? Okay. All right. Thank you. So, so we're on the topic of rock cycle, and this is the rock cycle isn't part of the Taiwan science curriculum because in the textbook it mentioned nothing about the rock cycle, and but I think the rock cycle, the whole formation of rock, igneous rock, metamorphic rock, how the rocks are formed is so important because in our textbook, they all they were required to do is they listed like 3 samples from each type of rock, and they're asked to do an experiment on whether this type of rock is is more, it's harder than the other type, which is softer, and without knowing the rock cycle, I think this is the big picture of how rocks are formed. I think this information is not very useful. So that's why I really like the idea of Michelle introducing the rock cycle. Secondly, this is the picture that they're actually on campus in the field using. Tiana, you mentioned about using technology, and that made me, so that's why I looked up one of the pictures I've taken from observing their classes. They were paired up in groups, and each group had an iPad, and they were given a type of acid. I forgot the name of it, but they're testing they were going about on campus, and they were testing all types of rocks that they encounter, and dripping the acid onto different types of rock and observing whether it forms bubbles. And the type of rock that forms bubbles, meaning that CO2, carbon dioxide, is created, and which means that the type of rock is made of
Calcite?
what's it called? Yes. Calcite. It's
calcium.
Calcium, yeah. And so I remember limestone is, with limestone, and what they found out was that whenever they drip it on like cement or, they would observe the bubbles, and later on they found out that most of the cement is made of limestones, and which contains carbohydrates and things like that. And so they were learning all these hands-on, and they were sharing that the rock and minerals unit is one of their favorites, and I was very amazed by it because when I was in elementary school, that's not one of the lessons I like because it's so, it's not relevant to our life, but the lesson that teacher Dr. May, because May Chen created, I think kids really loved it because they were sending them out on the field and testing the rocks themselves. Okay.
Yes, thanks for that.
That's all.
So I'd have to agree with Dr. Jane. It was pleasantly surprising to find out that students like the rock cycle the most out of the other lessons because it's quite difficult. Not only is it difficult in terms of the concept, but also because of the words associated with it. But yes, maybe it's because the students were given a hands-on activity where they're able to explore their own campus that makes it more memorable for them. And that ties up with what Yana said, that it becomes more memorable if students have ownership of the lesson, that it's not just something that the teachers teach the students, but that the students themselves learn for their own. Okay. Dr. Jenny, would you like to share your thoughts, please?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi. I'm very excited to hear that everyone has so much experience with this topic. I don't really have a lot of experience teaching science in English, but some of the things that you mentioned, like Amy mentioned, how you should use gestures and body language to help the students understand topics and things that they're not familiar with in English. It really would help them understand without having to translate. That's one of the key things that we really try our best to do when we teach in a different language. So that's the one thing that really popped out to me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jenny. We have here someone joined us on Ching Liao. Hi. Welcome. Would you like to say a few words? Okay. Maybe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe some other time.
Michelle, you are muted.
Oh.
Are you muted? We can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thanks for that. Okay, we have here someone came in, Ching Liao. Hi there. Would you like to tell us more about yourself? Thanks for unmuting, Ching. Please go ahead. We'll listen to you. Any thoughts, Ching? Okay, maybe later. How about Patty? Would you like to say a few words?
Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. And I don't have so much experience in teaching science with English, but I really agree with Tiana, and she said we can put some animation to the story, and it will appeal students more easily. And I think, but animation, if we animation is, we need more technique to do that. So I think it would be another problem with that. And my suggestion is maybe we can add some effect like the wind blow the rocks. They can add some wind effect like you know what I mean? And maybe teachers can add some, like teacher Yiming, and he said what is that? He said we can add some just body language gestures, and we can. I think that maybe the teacher can use their dramatic voice to tell the story. This is my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Patty, for that. Yes, we can use animation and body language as well. Okay, and I actually enjoyed this session because we are coming from different backgrounds and also from different parts of the globe. For instance, yes, many of us are from Taiwan, but Diana gives us a new perspective because she comes from Serbia rather. So this allows us to expand our understanding of the lesson and hopefully gives us more ideas on how we can create better science lessons for our for a second language learners. Okay, any it's already 10:01,
Michelle,
so any
yes, I know we need to end the session
yes,
soon,
yes.
but also like you because you're from Philippines and you've grown up learning everything in English. And I was asking the same question. I would like to ask you the same question. Do
Okay.
you need to memorize the science terms like the condensation, precipitation, evaporation, growing up when you were learning science? Because you have a chemistry background, and I like to know. Um, right now, we're not requiring our students in Taiwan to memorize these terms, and they're not even being tested on these terms. But we're only fostering their passion in learning science and English. And I like to know in Philippines, growing up. Um, so how what do you what do you think from
Okay.
the perspectives of a Philippine?
Okay, thanks for that. So just to give a background for everyone, I'm currently based in Taiwan. I'm working here, but I grew up and studied in the Philippines. In the Philippines, because we were conquered by the Americans, our lessons are all taught in English. English as a medium of instruction. It's not bilingual. So we had, going back to Dr. Chain's question, yes, we had to learn these terms. It was supposed to be second nature for us to know these terms. That is a good thing in the sense that we are imbibed with these science terms that becomes more natural for us. But the other side to it is that we don't get to appreciate these lessons in our own language. And that is one nice thing about CLIL is that not only do we get to learn about science or any other topic in a foreign language, but it is also tied up with our native language, which makes it a stronger approach because we are still connected to our own nationality.
Thank you very much for sharing. And that's why we're learning science bilingually, both in
Yes.
Chinese and English in Taiwan. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
One question,
Yes, go ahead,
if I
Diana.
may, without wish to impose anyone's personality or work or something. I was actually participating in the conference on CLIL, which was organized something I believe mid-November
Okay.
2020. The organizer was a man from the Netherlands, Patrick de Boer. I'm not quite sure whether I
Okay.
got his name right. And it was international conference, and people from literally all over the world were participating. So I was wondering whether it would be interesting to put in I have to find this group on Facebook, and perhaps to put the link in discussion box. Is it okay?
Oh, yes, definitely. Thanks for sharing that resource. In addition to putting it in our dialog box here, maybe we can
Not
also
here. I
put
would
it
put
in
it.
our
Sorry,
canvas. Yes, go ahead, please.
excuse me for interrupting. I would put it in discussion box because I need to go a little bit longer to
Sure, no
find to the
problem.
Facebook, so
Okay.
it would take
Oh, no
a few
problem.
minutes. So
Yes. Or if
I
you
have
want, you can
to.
just send it to me through email, and I'd be happy to share the same link to all the participants in this group.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any final words from anyone?
thank you
So
so much
lucky.
for the session, Michelle. Thank you,
Yes, thank you
Tiana,
so much.
for participating at 2 o'clock in the morning from
Yes,
Serbia.
yes. Thank you so much. Sorry if this time is inconvenient for you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Chen, Jenny, Jen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Evening. Thank you. Who's this last
Ching
participant?
Liao.
Yeah. Thank you.
And thank you, Patty, also for coming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this wraps up our session. So we hope to see you again next week, same time, next Saturday, same time. Okay, and meanwhile, let's keep interacting through our Canvas platform. Okay, have a good
Yes.
day, everyone. Thank you. Bye
Bye. Thank
bye.
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a nice
you.
Thank you
day.
too. You too. Have a
You
nice day,
too. You have a
everyone.
nice.
That's so.
Have a good one. Have a good one.
Okay. Please
Thank
get
you.
some sleep. Thank you.
We're here for 5 days. This is the third day. It starts from 8:30 to 8:30. Term. Well, the students get and from, but I think the rock cycle, the whole formation of rock, igneous.
Thanks for that.
And maybe teachers can add some, like teacher Amy, when he said
Thing in English.
Which makes it a stronger approach.
Because I
Next week, same time, next